After 3 bloody hard years on the tools, my father-in-law and boss, Bruce, handed my promotion to his niece, who'd only been at the joint for 8 weeks. I held a calm smile on my face, but inside, I was seething. I walked back to my office and wrote my resignation letter on the spot. "Congrats, mate," I said, handing it to Mia with a pat on the back. When Bruce read my letter, his face went as red as a tomato. "You're bloody joking, right?" he yelled, a vein in his neck throbbing like mad. Bruce's voice boomed across the boardroom as he held up a flute of bubbly. "I'm rapt to announce our new regional director, my incredibly talented niece, Mia Roberts." Clapping echoed around me, but I was rooted to the spot. My hands were frozen in my lap, while everyone else was giving it a real go. 8 weeks. Mia had been here exactly 8 weeks, and she was getting the gig I'd been promised for 3 years. I forced out a smile, clapping my hands together slowly, deliberately. The sound was hollow, just like everything else in that moment. Bruce's gaze flickered my way across the table, and I swear I saw something in his eyes. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was a challenge. Either way, he quickly looked away. "Jessica's been a terrific mentor for Mia already," he went on, his voice full of that condescending tone I was starting to hate. "I know she'll continue to support our new director in every way she can." Support. The word tasted like stale beer. 3 years of 60-hour weeks. 3 years of missing family barbecues to close deals. 3 years of building this department from a dozen people to almost 50. And now, I was expected to support someone else stepping into my shoes. Before we get stuck in, I want to give a massive shout out to you for being here and sharing these incredible stories with me. If you reckon loyalty should be more important than family politics in the workplace, how about you chuck us a sub? It's free ass and helps us reach more Aussie women who need to hear a story like this. Now, let's see how it all went down. Mia stood up, her blonde hair styled to a T, her designer suit sharp and flash. She couldn't have been more than 28, fresh out of business school with a fancy MBA and all her old man's contacts. "Thanks so much, Uncle Bruce. I'm really keen to learn from Jessica's experience as we move into this new stage." Learn from my experience. Transition. The corporate lingo made me want to chuck a wobbly. This wasn't a transition. This was a hostile takeover. After the meeting broke up, I walked back to my office on shaky legs. My nameplate still said Jessica Collins, Senior Operations Manager. But it felt like a lie now. I'd been passed over, and every single person in that room knew it. Some looked sympathetic. Others completely avoided eye contact. Helen from accounting gave me a pat on the shoulder as she walked past, whispering, "I'm so sorry, love." I closed the door to my office and sat at my desk, staring at the wall, where I'd hung my Employee of the Year awards. 3 of them, 1 for each year I'd been here. They didn't count for jack squat now. My phone buzzed with a text from my partner, Liam. "How'd the announcement go? It's finally official, right?" I stared at the message for a long time before I typed back, "We'll talk tonight." The rest of the day was a blur of pretending everything was normal. I answered emails, looked over reports, and sat in meetings where everyone kept giving me a look that was a mix of pity and confusion. By 5 o'clock, my jaw ached from holding that fake smile. Bruce showed up at my office door just as I was packing my bag. "Jessica, you got a minute?" "Course." I pointed to the chair across from my desk, the same chair he'd sat in 3 months ago and promised me this promotion was just a formality. He sat down, his big frame filling the seat, his gray hair glinting under the lights. "I know this was a tough day for you. You reckon?" I kept my voice professional. "Listen, you're incredibly valuable to this company. Mia's gonna need someone with your experience to help her get across things. I'm hoping you'll take on a senior advisory role to train her up, to help her succeed in her new position," he corrected, but we both knew what he meant. I leaned back in my chair, watching the man who'd been my father-in-law for 8 years. I'd always respected Bruce, admired his business savvy, and valued the way he'd welcomed me into the family. But sitting there, watching him try to spin this betrayal as an opportunity, I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Bruce, mate, can I ask you something?" "Of course." 3 months ago, you said this job was mine. You said I'd earned it, that no one deserved it more. What changed?" He looked fidgety, toying with his wedding ring. "Business needs change. Mia brings a fresh perspective, new ideas. 8 weeks of a fresh perspective versus 3 years of proven results. Jessica, you're taking this way too personally." "Taking it personally?" I almost laughed out loud. "We're talking about my career, my life. How else should I be taking it?" "Your family," he said, as if that explained everything. "Families gotta look out for each other. Mia needs this opportunity, and frankly, you're pretty well settled here. You don't need a promotion as much as she does." That was the truth of it. I was family, which meant I was expected to sacrifice for everyone else's benefit. I was supposed to be grateful for the crumbs, happy to be reliable old Jessica, who'd always be there to clean up everyone else's mess. "I get it." I stood up, grabbing my jacket. "I'm off. Liam's doing dinner tonight." Bruce looked relieved at the change of subject. "Give my best to my boy. Jessica, I really appreciate you being so understanding about this." I just nodded and walked out, my heels clicking on the marble floor of the foyer. Understanding. That's what he called it when someone just copped a knife in the back. The drive home felt like it took forever. The traffic on the freeway was a real pain, giving me too much time to think. I kept replaying Bruce's words, the way he just casually dismissed 3 years of my life. Families gotta look out for each other, unless it was for me, apparently. As I pulled into the driveway, the sun was setting. Liam's car was already there, and I could see the warm light spilling from the kitchen windows. Home had always been my sanctuary, the place where I could take off the work mask and just be me. But tonight, even that felt tainted. How was I supposed to face Liam and tell him that his own dad had just nuked my career with a smile and a glass of champagne? I sat in the car for another 5 minutes, watching the neighbors walk their dogs and water their gardens. Regular people living regular lives, completely unaware that my world had just gone completely sideways. Tomorrow, I'd have to go back to that office and pretend everything was all good. I'd have to train my replacement with grace and professionalism, while my heart broke a little more each day. But tonight, I just needed to sit in this car and feel the full weight of what had happened. Tomorrow, I'd figure out the next step. Liam had set the table by the time I finally walked through the front door. The smell of his famous lasagna filled the kitchen, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel a lick of hunger. He took one look at my face and immediately pulled out a chair. "Sit down. Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the champagne toast, about how Bruce had looked down on my 3 years of work, about how I was expected to train my replacement. Liam's jaw tightened with every detail, his knuckles turning white as he clenched his wine glass. "He seriously said you were settled and didn't need a promotion?" His voice had a dangerous edge to it I'd rarely heard. Every single word. Liam pushed his chair back from the table, running a hand through his dark hair. "I'm calling him right now." "No." I reached across and grabbed his wrist. "This isn't your fight, love. It's mine." But the damage was done. The conversation I dreaded was over, and now Liam was furious at his own dad, another victim of Bruce's decision. I walked into the office the next morning with a fake smile plastered on, ready to start what Bruce had called my advisory role. Mia bounced into my office at 9 on the dot, her planner color-coded, and her enthusiasm just plain exhausting. "Jessica, I'm so keen to learn from you. Uncle Bruce said you know this department better than anyone. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Let's start with the Reynolds account. They're our biggest client, and they've been with us since before you were born. For the next 2 hours, I walked Mia through our client management system, explaining the intricate relationships I'd built, each person's preferences, the delicate balance it took to keep everyone happy. She scribbled notes frantically, asking questions that showed she understood bugger all about the business. So when Mr. Reynolds calls to complain about a late shipment, what do I do? Don't promise anything you can't deliver. You listen, acknowledge his concerns, and give him a realistic timeline with a little bit of wiggle room. But what if he threatens to take his business somewhere else? I paused, watching her perfectly made-up face. She truly had no idea what she was dealing with. Mia, Reynolds Industries accounts for 30% of our annual revenue. If we lose them because of poor handling, 47 people will be out of a job, including you. Her pen stopped moving. Oh, by lunchtime, my patience was running thin. Everything I'd spent years learning through trial and error, I was now expected to pass on to someone who hadn't even read a quarterly report. But the real turning point came during my lunch break. I was reheating leftover soup in the kitchen when I heard familiar voices drifting from Bruce's office next door. The walls in this old building were famously thin, and Bruce's booming voice carried easily through the shared wall. The transition is going perfectly, he said. Mia's picking everything up so quickly. Are you sure Jessica's okay with all this? That was Mia's voice, younger and uncertain. I moved closer to the wall, my soup forgotten on the bench. Jessica was a great steady hand, but we need someone with new ideas. Mia is our future. Bruce's words hit me like a splash of cold water. She's good at following instructions, maintaining the status quo, but that's not what we need anymore. The company needs innovation, energy. You bring that. But she seems to know everything. Some of the clients even asked to speak with her specifically. Bruce chuckled, and the sound made my skin crawl. That's exactly the problem. Jessica became a crutch for our clients. They got too comfortable with her. We need to shake things up, get them used to working with someone who's going to challenge their thinking instead of just agreeing with everything they say. Challenge their thinking. I'd spent 3 years building relationships based on trust and reliability, and Bruce was calling that a weakness. The client relationships I'd so carefully nurtured weren't assets. They were obstacles to his future vision. But what about her feelings? Mia asked. She worked really hard for this position. Jessica's family. She'll understand that sometimes we have to make decisions that serve the greater good. Besides, where's she going to go? She's 42, Mia. Companies want young talent, fresh perspectives. We're doing her a favor by keeping her on. At my age, 42 and apparently over the hill, I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles white, fighting the urge to storm into that office and tell Bruce exactly what I thought of his so-called greater good. I just feel bad, Mia continued. She's been so kind training me, and I can tell she's hurting. That's because you have a good heart. But business isn't about feelings. Jessica will adapt. She always does. That's what makes her valuable. She's predictable, reliable. She'll do whatever we ask because she doesn't have a choice. Predictable, reliable, no choice. I grabbed my soup and walked back to my office, my hand shaking with a new kind of anger. Not the hot, explosive kind, but a cold, calculating fury that settled in my bones and changed everything. For 3 years, I'd believed I was building something meaningful. I thought my loyalty and dedication had value. But I was just a placeholder, a babysitter for his clients until his precious niece was ready to take the reins. And the worst part? He was right about one thing. I had been too predictable. I'd swallowed every slight, smiled through every insult, because I believed it would pay off in the end. But sitting in my office, staring at those Employee of the Year awards while Bruce's words echoed in my head, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. I was no longer the woman who had walked into this building that morning. The woman who'd spent 3 years trying to prove her worth to people who would never see it was gone. That afternoon, I continued to train Mia with the same professional attitude. But inside, something new was forming. Each question she asked, each gap in her knowledge I filled, each client relationship I explained in detail. I was documenting my own value, not for Bruce's sake, but for my own clarity. When 5 o'clock hit, I packed my bag with a deliberate calm. Tomorrow would bring new discoveries, I was sure. But tonight, I had some serious thinking to do about what came next. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a cold cup of tea beside me. Liam was working late, which gave me the quiet I needed to do the thing I'd been thinking about for the past fortnight. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long time before I started to type. Dear Bruce, please accept this letter as my formal notification of my resignation from the position of Senior Operations Manager at Alden Ventures. My last day of employment will be Friday, March 15th, in accordance with the standard 2-week notice period. I want to thank you for the opportunities I have had here over the past 3 years. I have learned a great deal, and I am grateful for the experience. I wish the company continued success in the future. Sincerely, Jessica Collins. It was short, professional, final. I read it over 3 times, each time feeling a strange sense of peace. There was no anger in the words, no accusations or emotional outbursts, just a clean, dignified exit from a situation that had become unbearable. I printed the letter out on my home printer, signed it with my favorite pen, and slipped it into a pristine white envelope. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I dressed with extra care, a navy blue power suit, the one that always made me feel confident, paired with my grandmother's pearl earrings. This was going to be a memorable day. I wanted to look the part. I got to the office early, before most people, and placed the envelope in the middle of my desk. Then, I started my morning as if nothing had changed. I answered emails, looked over reports, and even helped Paul from accounting fix a spreadsheet formula. At 10 on the dot, I picked up the envelope and walked to Bruce's office. His secretary, Sue, looked up with her usual warm smile. "Morning, Jessica. He's just finishing a call." "No rush, I'll wait." Sue had been Bruce's secretary for 15 years, and she'd always been kind to me. I wondered if she'd remember our little morning chats about her grandkids and my weekend plans. Probably not. Secretaries see people come and go all the time. Bruce's office door opened, and he emerged looking harried, his phone still pressed to his ear. He waved me inside while continuing his conversation about quarterly forecasts. I sat in the familiar chair across from his desk and waited. When he finally hung up, he looked at me with an almost unconcealed impatience. "Jessica, what can I do for you? I've got back-to-back meetings until 3. I placed the envelope on his desk without a word. He stared at it for a moment, then looked at me, confused. "What's this?" "Open it." Bruce tore the envelope with his letter opener, unfolded the paper, and read. I watched his expression change from mild curiosity to shock to something close to panic. His face changed color, going from pale to beetroot red. "You're not serious." The words exploded out of him as he shot up from his chair, which rolled back with a bang. "This is a joke, right? Some kind of negotiation." I remained seated, my hands calmly in my lap. "I'm dead serious. Jessica, we just promoted Mia 2 weeks ago. You can't just walk out now. She needs your guidance, your experience. The Reynolds account alone. She'll be right, I said. Mia's got plenty of enthusiasm. I'm sure she'll figure it out. Bruce started pacing behind his desk, running a hand through his gray hair. This is about the promotion, isn't it? Listen, I know you were disappointed, but we can talk about other opportunities. Maybe a different title, some added responsibility. Bruce, stop. He froze. I'd never used that tone with him before. Calm, but firm. This isn't about the promotion anymore. This is about respect. And the truth is, I've realized I don't have any of that here. That's not true. You're valued, Jessica. You're family. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my skirt. No, I'm not. Family would have been honest with me about their plans. Family wouldn't have let me train my replacement without telling me that's what I was doing. Family wouldn't have described me as predictable and reliable behind my back while talking about how I didn't have any other options. Bruce's face went white. You heard that conversation. Every single word. The silence stretched between us, thick with 3 years of unspoken truths. Bruce sank into his chair, suddenly looking a lot older. Jessica, please. Let's talk this out like rational adults. Whatever you heard, you must have misunderstood. I understood perfectly. I moved toward the door, then stopped with my hand on the doorknob. But you were right about one thing. I have been too predictable. I've spent 3 years making excuses for being passed over, convincing myself that my loyalty would eventually be rewarded. But I'm not predictable anymore. What do you want? More money? A corner office? Name it. I turned to look at him one last time. I want to work at a place that values what I bring to the table. A place that sees potential instead of limitations. A place that doesn't think 42 is too old to have new ideas. Bruce opened his mouth to reply, but I was already out the door. Sue looked up as I walked past her desk, her face etched with worry. Clearly she'd heard Bruce's raised voice. Everything okay, love? I stopped and smiled at her. A genuine one this time. Everything's going to be just fine, Sue. Look after yourself. Walking back to my office, I felt lighter than I had in months. The decision was made. The words were said. And there was no going back. I had 2 weeks to finish projects, document processes, and transition my responsibilities. 2 weeks to say goodbye to a chapter of my life that had taught me more about myself than I ever expected. The phone on my desk was ringing when I sat down. News travels fast in a small office, and I suspected the next 2 weeks were going to be a real corker. But for the first time since that horrible day in the boardroom, I was looking forward to what came next. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reorganizing my home office. I'd been out of a job for exactly 2 weeks, spending my days updating my CV, networking on LinkedIn, and trying to figure out what was next. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me pick up rather than let it go to voicemail. Jessica Collins. This is Chloe Lim from Horizon Tech. I hope I'm not bothering you. I almost dropped my coffee cup. Horizon Tech was one of the fastest growing companies in the area, known for their innovative approach to logistics and a reputation for promoting based on merit. Not at all. What can I do for you? I'll get straight to the point. Your name came up in a conversation with David Reynolds yesterday. He had nothing but great things to say about your work at Alden Ventures and suggested we reach out. David Reynolds. Of course. The client I'd nurtured for 3 years, whose trust I'd earned over countless late nights and weekend calls. I'd wondered if he'd even noticed I was gone. That's very kind of him, I managed to say. We have a regional operations director position, essentially overseeing 3 departments and managing our biggest client accounts. David seemed to think you'd be a perfect fit. Would you be open to hearing more? My heart started to thump. This wasn't just any job. This was exactly what I should have had at Alden Ventures, but bigger, better. I'm very interested. Within an hour, I had an email with preliminary details that made my eyes go wide. The salary was 30% more than what I'd been making. The benefits package included stock options, and the title, Regional Operations Director, was what I'd been promised, but never received. The interview process was a blur. Chloe introduced me to the team leaders I'd be managing, all of whom seemed genuinely excited to collaborate. The company culture was refreshingly open. No hidden agendas or family politics, just clear expectations and transparent communication. In my final interview with the CEO, Julian Grant, he asked me something that caught me off guard. "Why did you leave Alden Ventures? David mentioned you'd been there for a few years." I'd practiced my answer to this, but sitting across from Julian, a man famous for building his company on merit rather than connections, I decided to be honest. I reached a ceiling that had nothing to do with my performance or my potential. Sometimes you realize that loyalty without respect is just servitude. Julian nodded slowly. "We don't believe in ceilings here, Jessica. We believe in upward mobility and mutual respect. Does that sound like something you can work with?" It's everything I've been looking for. 3 days later, Chloe called with an offer that exceeded my best-case scenario. As I read over the contract, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement about going to work. My first day at Horizon Tech was like stepping into another universe. The building was modern and bright with open-plan workspaces and technology that actually worked. But more importantly, from the moment I walked in, I was made to feel like a valued member of the team rather than a necessary annoyance. Sarah Martinez, who would report directly to me, had been running things temporarily and could have been resentful of my arrival. Instead, she greeted me with a comprehensive summary of current projects and a genuine eagerness to collaborate. "I've been looking forward to this," she said, as we looked over quarterly forecasts. "Chloe told me about your experience with large-scale client management. We've been struggling with the Anderson Group account, and frankly, we need your experience." Experience, not reliability or hard work. Experience. The difference was profound. Within my first week, I was leading strategy meetings and making decisions that had an immediate impact. When I proposed a restructure of client communication protocols based on lessons learned at Alden Ventures, Julian not only listened, but asked me to present the proposal to the board of directors. "You were doing this for 3 years, he asked after my presentation. "And your old boss never promoted you to director level?" Apparently, I was too predictable for a leadership position. Julian laughed, not at me, but at the absurdity of it. "Their loss is our gain. Predictability and results is exactly what we want in a leader." The meeting with the Anderson Group was my first big test. They'd been threatening to pull out of Horizon Tech for months, frustrated with communication breakdowns and missed deadlines. I spent 2 days preparing, using every client relationship building skill I'd developed over the years. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, we'd not only kept their business, but they'd agreed to expand their contract by 40%. "How'd you do that?" Sarah asked as we walked back to my office. "I listened to what they actually needed instead of what I thought they should want. Then I showed them exactly how we could make it happen." News of the Anderson Group's success spread quickly through the company. Suddenly, other department heads were asking for my advice on their client relationships. Julian started including me in executive strategy sessions. "You know," he said after one particularly productive meeting, "I'm starting to think we underestimated this position when we created it. Would you be open to a discussion about expanding the responsibilities?" Expanding responsibilities. At Alden Ventures, that phrase had always meant more work with no recognition. Here, it felt like a real opportunity. By the end of my first month, I was not only managing operations, but I was also heading up a new client retention initiative. My team had grown from 5 to over 18 people, and our department's performance metrics were the highest they'd been in 2 years. Every morning when I walked into Horizon Tech, I was reminded of what it felt like to work at a place that valued contribution over connections. My ideas weren't just listened to, they were acted upon. My experience wasn't just acknowledged, it was leveraged for the company's growth. The contrast to my old job was stark. At Alden Ventures, I'd spent 3 years trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I was expendable. At Horizon Tech, my worth was recognized, and the focus was on how to maximize my contributions to the overall success. For the first time in my career, I understood what it was like to work at a company that truly valued merit over politics. 3 months into my new role at Horizon Tech, industry whispers started to trickle in through unexpected channels. At a quarterly networking event, I ran into Fiona White from Pacific Financial, one of Alden Ventures' smaller clients. "Jessica, I heard you moved to Horizon Tech. Good on you." Her tone had something more to it than just a casual congrats. "Things have been interesting since you left." I kept my face neutral. "Oh. Well, let's just say our new contact at Alden Ventures isn't as quick to respond as you were. 3 weeks to return a call? That never happened when you were handling our account." Before I could reply, she was pulled away by another colleague, but her words stuck with me. The next piece of information came from an even more surprising source. David Reynolds called me directly at Horizon Tech 2 weeks later. "Jessica, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I've got a quick business question, but I also wanted to fill you in on something." "Of course, David. What's up?" "We'll likely be ending our relationship with Alden Ventures at the end of this quarter." I felt my stomach drop. Reynolds Industries was Alden Ventures' biggest client. Losing them would be a disaster. "I'm sorry to hear that. May I ask what happened?" David sighed heavily. "You remember how we used to have those monthly strategy calls, where you'd walk me through the quarterly forecasts, and we'd adjust our approach based on market changes? Of course. Well, your replacement, Mia, I think it is. She's missed 2 of our recent scheduled calls. When she finally did call back, she couldn't answer basic questions about our account status. She just kept saying she'd get back to me with the information, but those callbacks never came." I closed my eyes, picturing Bruce's reaction when he found out about David's decision. The final straw was last week. We had a delivery crisis. You remember how you used to handle those? Dropping everything, coordinating with logistics, and giving us an update every hour until it was resolved. I remember. Mia told us to file a complaint through the proper channels, and that she'd look at it when she had time. Jessica, we're talking about a $2 million shipment sitting in the wrong warehouse. She treated it like a paperwork issue. I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't untangle. Satisfaction that my value was being proven, but also a genuine sadness for the company I had once cared so much about. I'm sorry things have come to that, David. I know Bruce valued your partnership. That's what I thought. When I called to speak with him directly about our concerns, he basically told me that Mia represented the company's new direction, and if we couldn't adapt to their new approach, maybe we weren't a good fit anymore. My jaw went slack. Bruce had basically invited his biggest client to leave rather than admit that promoting Mia was a mistake. Anyway, David continued, I wanted you to know that our decision has nothing to do with any animosity toward Alden Ventures in general. It's strictly about the quality of the service. And Jessica, the recommendation I gave to Horizon Tech about hiring you, it's the best business advice I've given in years. After we hung up, I sat in my office, processing what I'd learned. Losing Reynolds Industries would force Alden Ventures to lay off at least 15 people. These weren't abstract business consequences. These were real people I'd worked with for 3 years. My assistant knocked on the door. Jessica, Chloe Lim wants to see you when you have a minute. I found Chloe in her office with a stack of industry reports scattered across her desk. "Sit down, Jessica. I've heard some interesting things about your old boss." My heart sank. Had the news already made it to Horizon Tech about Alden Ventures' issues? Would this reflect poorly on me? "The Reynolds account was a nice win for us," she continued. "But apparently, they aren't the only Alden Ventures client looking for alternatives. We've had 3 companies contact us this week asking about our services. All of them specifically mentioned your name." Relief flooded through me. "Seriously? Seems you left quite an impression during your time there. The thing is, how do you want to handle this? These could be significant opportunities for Horizon Tech, but I want to make sure we're approaching this ethically." I appreciated Chloe's consideration. "I think as long as we're responding to genuine inquiries rather than actively poaching clients, we're on the right track. These companies have legitimate concerns about service that we can address." Exactly what I thought. "Are you comfortable leading the presentations for these potential new accounts?" Completely. Over the next month, Horizon Tech signed on 4 new clients, all of them former Alden Ventures accounts. Each presentation followed the same pattern: companies frustrated with declining service quality, missed deadlines, and poor communication. I found myself defending the Alden Ventures team even as I was pitching our services. "They're going through a transition period," I would explain diplomatically. "But at Horizon Tech, we can offer you the consistency and reliability you're looking for." The toughest moment came when Helen from accounting, my old colleague at Alden Ventures, called me at home one evening. "Jessica, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from Liam." "Of course not, Helen. How are you doing?" "Honestly, I'm scared. There are rumors of layoffs. The Reynolds account is gone, and apparently 3 other big clients have left too." Her voice trembled. "People are saying it's because you left, that you took all the client relationships with you." "Helen, I'm not blaming you," she interrupted. "I get why you left. We all saw how they treated you. But Jessica, some of us have been with the company for years. We've got mortgages, kids in uni. If Alden Ventures goes under..." The weight of the unforeseen consequences settled on my shoulders. I had wanted Bruce to realize my value, but I had never wanted good people to suffer for his poor decisions. "Are you looking for other opportunities?" I asked gently. "At my age, who's going to hire a 58-year-old accountant?" I thought about Horizon Tech's expansion plans, about the new positions we'd be creating as we grew. "Helen, would it be okay if I gave Chloe Lim your contact info? We're going to need experienced financial support as we take on these new accounts." The relief in her voice was audible. "Jessica, you do that. You're good at what you do. That should matter more than politics or age." After I hung up, I realized something had shifted in my perspective. This was no longer about the downfall of Alden Ventures. It was about people finding places where their contributions were valued. Some of my former colleagues would land on their feet, maybe in better positions than they were in before. But Bruce's lesson was becoming clear to everyone in the industry. When you prioritize connections over competence, you don't just lose good employees. You lose the very foundation that keeps a business stable. 6 months after Helen joined our team at Horizon Tech, I received an invitation that stopped me in my tracks. It was an embossed card, formal and elegant. "Bruce Alden cordially invites you to the Alden Ventures Annual Awards Dinner." I stared at the invitation for a long time, wondering what game Bruce was playing now. Liam found me in the kitchen that night, the card in my hand. "You're not seriously going, are you?" he said, reading over my shoulder. "Actually, I think I am." He looked at me like I'd just suggested swimming with sharks. "Jessica, why would you put yourself through that?" "Because I'm not the woman who left that company in tears anymore. I want to see who I've become." The dinner was at the Grand Ballroom downtown, the same place I'd attended these events for 3 years running. But when I walked in that night, everything was different. I wore a new dress, an emerald green silk number that made me feel confident and powerful. More importantly, I carried a different attitude. Chloe had insisted on coming with me. Moral support, she'd said, though I suspected she was just as curious about the company that was foolish enough to let me go. The cocktail hour was just as awkward as I'd expected. Former colleagues approached with careful smiles and hushed conversations. Some seemed genuinely happy to see me thriving, while others seemed uncomfortable, as if my success somehow reflected poorly on their decision to stay. Paul from accounting cornered me near the bar. "Jessica, we all miss you. Things just haven't been the same since you left." "How's everyone holding up?" I asked diplomatically. "Well, Helen getting that gig at Horizon Tech was a great thing for her. And honestly, it's inspired a few of us to start looking elsewhere. Sometimes you don't realize you're settling until you see someone else refuse to." Before I could reply, he was pulled away by another colleague, but his words stuck with me. Then, the lights dimmed, and Bruce took to the stage. He looked older than I remembered, his gray hair thinner, his face more lined. The confident business leader I'd once respected seemed to have diminished somehow. "Welcome, everyone, to a challenging but meaningful year for Alden Ventures," he began. "We've learned valuable lessons about adaptability, about the importance of strong leadership, and about recognizing talent wherever it lies." His eyes found mine in the crowd, and for a moment, neither of us looked away. "This year, we honor the employees who have shown exceptional dedication during difficult times, the people who stepped up when we needed them most." The awards went on as usual. Honors for sales achievements, for excellence in customer service, for innovation and problem solving. But there was something forced about the whole ceremony, as if Bruce was trying to recreate past successes through sheer willpower. Then came the shocker. "Our final award tonight is a new one," Bruce announced. "The Leadership Excellence Recognition Award for someone who may no longer be with our company, but whose impact continues to shape the way we do business. Jessica Collins, please come up to the stage." The room erupted in applause, but I remained frozen in my seat. Chloe nudged me gently. "Go on. This is your moment." Walking up to the stage felt like the longest journey of my life. Bruce met me halfway, holding a crystal trophy that caught the ballroom lights. "Jessica, your dedication to excellence and your commitment to our clients set a standard that continues to inspire our team. While we were sorry to see you move on to new opportunities, we wanted to acknowledge the foundation you built here." I took the microphone, looking out at the faces I'd worked with for 3 years. Some were smiling, some looked uncomfortable, and a few, like Mia sitting at Bruce's family table, looked completely mortified. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady despite my heart thumping. "My time at Alden Ventures taught me valuable lessons about business, about relationships, and most importantly, about knowing my own value." I paused, letting that sink in. I learned that loyalty is important, but it should never be a one-way street. That hard work is meaningful, but only when it's recognized and valued. And that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself and for your career is to walk away from a situation that no longer serves your growth. The applause this time was more scattered, more uncertain. I'm grateful for my time here because it led me to where I am now, at a company that values merit over politics, where ideas are listened to no matter who proposes them, and where potential isn't limited by artificial ceilings. I handed the microphone back to Bruce, whose smile had become noticeably strained. "Thanks again for this recognition, and to my former colleagues, remember that you have more power than you think. Use it wisely." As I walked back to my table, a hush fell over the room. Then Helen started clapping, followed by Paul, and then others. Throughout the room. Not everyone joined in, but enough did that the message was clear. After dinner, Bruce came over to our table as Chloe and I were getting ready to leave. "Jessica, can I have a word?" Chloe discreetly excused herself, leaving Bruce and me alone for the first time since I'd resigned. "That was quite a speech," he said, his voice unreadable. "It was the truth. I suppose I had that coming." He looked tired, defeated in a way I'd never seen before. "You know, we're restructuring the leadership team. If you'd like to come back." "Bruce, stop." I stood up, meeting his eyes. 6 months ago, I might have been interested in proving something to you. Tonight, I realize that I don't have to prove a thing to anyone but myself. The company is struggling without you. The company is struggling because you made a decision based on family loyalty instead of business sense. That's not my problem anymore. I picked up my purse and the crystal trophy, which felt surprisingly heavy in my hand. I hope things work out for Alden Ventures. I truly do. But that chapter of my life is closed. Walking out of the ballroom, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't expected. The scared, passed-over woman who had once craved Bruce's approval was gone. In her place was someone who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to demand it be recognized. Chloe linked arms with me as we got to the car park. "So, what's it feel like to get the last word?" I smiled, genuinely happy for the first time that night. Like freedom. The drive home was quiet, both of us processing the events of the evening. When I finally walked through the front door, Liam was waiting with a cup of tea and a questioning look. "How was it?" "Perfect," I said, and I meant it. It was absolutely perfect. That night, I placed the crystal trophy on my bookshelf next to a photo from my first day at Horizon Tech. Two symbols of the same journey. One representing where I'd been, the other showing where I was going. The woman in that photo was confident, valued, and not afraid to take up space in the world. She was everything I'd always had the potential to be, just waiting for the right moment to emerge. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply becoming the person you were always meant to be. If this story of workplace success had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Jessica gave that powerful speech at the awards dinner, showing Bruce exactly what he'd lost. What was your favorite moment? Let me know in the comments below. Don't miss out on more inspiring stories just like this one. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video.